Another week in entertainment has come and gone, and as always, The Real Deal is here to give you the lowdown on all things entertainment.
This week we've got new segments of On the Street with Nick Ewing, Under the Radar with Chauncey Baker, Swing at Me with Kelly Figley, and much more.
So stay tuned because The Real Deal starts now. Hello, and welcome to The Real Deal, Ball State's one and only entertainment news show. I'm Kaylee Russell.
And I'm Connor Fack. In the weeks following awards seasons, the news from Hollywood can come a little slower and steadier than usual.
But never fear, Jordan Bennett Barnes is here with 3 new exciting stories from the world of Hollywood. Jordan?
What up, Real Deal viewers? This week, Warner Brothers announced that they would be teaming up with Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling once again to produce another film franchise with her source material. The films will focus on her 2001 book, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, a textbook from Harry Potter's Hogwarts. The stories for the 3 mega movies will revolve around a main character, but there is no talk of whether there will be sequels or prequels to the Harry Potter films. Either way, I'm sure fans of her books will love it. Speaking of sequels, Greg Jacobs is now set to direct the upcoming sequel to the summer blockbuster, Magic Mike. He'll be taking the reins from Steven Soderbergh and putting his own directorial touch on the stripper-themed film. They have also revealed the title to said sequel, Magic Mike XXL. With a title like that, I'm sure that this film is going to have some huge acts that girls are going to love. While we're on the topic of XXL news, Lollapalooza is beginning this week in Chicago. The annual music festival recently announced their lineup with some surprising headliners: Detroit rapper Eminem, Nashville rock band Kings of Leon, and Atlanta hip-hop duo Outkast. It was rumored that Eminem would be a headliner, but fans were surprised to hear Andre 3000 and Big Boy would be taking the stage. It's been long since the Grammy-winning duo has been together, since their hiatus taken back in 2007. The duo has pursued solo careers, but I know music fans everywhere will appreciate their reunion on the Chicago scene very much. I know I will. All right, viewers, those are your Hollywood headlines. Kaylee and Connor, back to you.
Thanks, Jordan. Speaking of headlines, the topic of our next segment has been one of the most anticipated films recently.
That's right. If you follow film news at all, chances are you've heard about the first installment of this new film series, and here with her review of it is Nicole Kane.
One highly anticipated film released last week was the story of the post-apocalyptic city of Chicago, Divergent. Based off the best-selling book series Divergent by Veronica Roth, the story follows a lead heroine as she tries to overcome an oppressive government. That sounds incredibly familiar to another series about a post-apocalyptic world that was later turned into a film series. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of the Divergent book series, but the movie, well, I'm not sure how I feel about it. The casting of Shailene Woodley was a great choice because she really makes us feel with the character. The other characters were good, but no one had an astounding performance that made me stop and take notice. Of course, with any book turned into a movie, avid fans of the book will never be 100% impressed with the film adaptation. I noticed some details that didn't quite follow the book, but hey, no one is perfect, and we have to remember that movies have to follow some type of reasonable time frame. I mean, unless you're the Lord of the Rings, but that's for another time. So I understand that some of the scenes had to be cut. Overall, the film had its strong suits and its downsides, but overall, I would give it a 7 out of 10. It is a spot-on representation of the book, but I did enjoy the movie. So if you want to see this whole Divergent thing, I'd definitely suggest it. Go see Divergent in theaters now.
It's hard to please everyone with book-to-movie adaptations.
That's for sure, but here at The Real Deal, you don't need to worry about disappointing adaptations.
Just commercial breaks, and it's time for our first one.
Coming up is a new On the Street with Nick Ewing and Under the Radar with Chauncey Baker. Stick around.
Existence, you know the truth. So why do you hate him? It's a very simple question. Why do you hate God?
He's not there, he's surely.
Penny, my bride! What?
DreamWorks, Mr. Peabody and Sherman.
CIA.
Interpol.
This is my travel badge. Here's my real badge.
You must have been looking at the wrong badge.
You were saying?
Muppets, Most Wanted.
Sigma!
It won't be safe until they're removed.
to fight back.
Ready.
So it's the end of everything.
Beginning. Beginning of everything.
Welcome back. There are so many superhero movies coming out this year, and anticipation is building for many of them.
This week, Nick Ewing took to the campus of Ball State University to ask students all about it.
Take it away, Nick.
What's up, guys? Nick Ewing here for The Real Deal. This year looks like it's going to be a really big year for movies. So I'm going around asking Ball State kids which superhero franchise and movie they're most excited about. Let's see what they have to say.
Probably going to be the X-Men. Of the three, X-Men is probably my favorite.
X-Men's your favorite?
Yeah, out of the three.
Marvel or DC?
Marvel, because that's what I want to know.
There you go. Which superhero movie are you most excited for this year, Neil?
Nah.
You don't like superhero movies?
Oh, Guardians of the Galaxy looks awesome.
Are you a fan of superhero movies?
I am, actually.
So you know this is a big year for superhero movies, right?
It is.
Are you looking forward to any in particular?
I'm looking forward to the new Captain America.
The new Captain America?
Yeah.
Superhero movie are you most excited for this year?
I'm excited for the Avengers 2.
A lot of people are saying that. Awesome.
I'm mostly excited for the Avengers 2, and I've heard that Spider-Man is going to be involved this year, so I'm excited about that.
Which movie are you most excited for?
Is there a Captain America movie coming out?
Yes, there is. Captain America Winter Soldier, I think is the name of it. Is he?
Yes.
I haven't seen the first one.
I'll go check out The Incredibles 2. I don't know when it comes out, but I'll go see it.
Not really seen those movies, the comic book movies.
You don't like going to movies, watching superhero movies?
Not really, no.
No? Why not?
Kind of boring.
All the action and stuff, you still think that's boring?
Yeah, but it's not that great.
Oh, man.
The story behind it is kind of lame.
Well, there you have it. Looks like people are really looking forward to the new Avengers movie and Captain America 2. So I asked people if they preferred Marvel or DC, and literally no one said DC. Sorry, Batman. I'm Nick Ewing. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Nick. Another insightful and entertaining look into the opinions of our viewers.
As always, but now it's time for another opinion with Chauncey Baker.
Oh, the rant?
No, this week it's under the radar. Chauncey does more than the rant, you know.
I know, Connor. Take it away, Chauncey.
What do you think of when you hear the word power trio? Guitars, bass, and drums. These are the three ingredients that are common to a stripped-down rock band. Groups like Cream, Green Day, ZZ Top, the Jimi Hendrix Experience, and Nirvana are popular power trios throughout musical history. However, there were groups like Morphine, which turned all of the usual expectations of a rock group and turned them on their heads. Formed in 1989, this Boston-based band consisted of Mark Salmon on bass guitar, Jerome Dupree on drums, and Dana Colley on baritone sax. You heard that right. There is no actual guitar player. Instead, singer-slash-bassist Mark Salmon had an altered two-string bass that he played as if it were a regular guitar. What happened was an interesting form of jazzy alternative rock that must be heard to be believed. The band members dubbed the music low rock due to Salmon's low voice and Colley's rich bari sax. The breakout album was 1993's Cure for Pain, which featured songs like Buena and Candy. Yes, there are a lot of drug-related themes throughout these songs. I mean, with a name like Morphine, what would you expect? My favorite album of theirs was 1995's Yes, which had an excellent opener track with Honey White. In 1996, they were signed to the now-defunct DreamWorks Records, and they released 1997's Like Swimming. This album was an expansion upon their already established eccentric sound. Other instruments like keyboards and traditional Middle Eastern instruments came into play. However, this does not detract from their signature minimalist sound. Like Swimming's sales figures were quite disappointing, even with the marketing pull of DreamWorks. Sad news came to the band in 1999 when Mark Sandman died of a heart attack during a live show in Palestrina, Italy. Basically, this meant the end of the band. However, the next year, their final album, The Night, was released posthumously. Salmon's death may have brought about the end of the band, but it has not killed the memory that this band has left with many musicians. Last year, the documentary Cure for Pain, The Mark Sandman Story, was released. There are interviews with musicians like Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age, Les Claypool from Primus, and even the likes of John Legend. If you haven't heard of this band before, I'm not surprised. Look them up on YouTube or Spotify. You won't regret it. I'm Chauncey Baker, and this has been Under the Radar. Mark, wherever you may be, your music was the cure for pain you always sing about.
Thanks, Chauncey. Music is such a subjective thing, but it's always nice to get some new recommendations.
While Connor and I check out Morphine, it's time for another commercial break.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Here at The Real Deal, we always try to present both sides to an argument.
Whether it's a review or Hollywood headlines, there are usually two sides to every coin.
But sometimes you just can't help but really, really dislike a movie or an artist or even a TV show. And it's even worse when it's something that a lot of other people really seem to enjoy.
Kelly Figley is here to tell us about a show she loves to hate. Kelly?
For my first Swing at Me segment, I thought I'd talk about a show that I think is incredibly overrated. That show, my friends, is none other than the unrealistic, annoying Glee. Okay, so I'm a theater kid. I'm double majoring in theatrical studies and telecommunications. I was in choir for 4 years in high school and show choir for 2 of the 4, and I cannot stand this show. Granted, I did watch it for the first 2 seasons before I had to cut cold turkey. It was decent then. The script made sense, it was mostly realistic, and the characters were all likable, except for Rachel. She always has and always will annoy me. Leah Michele acted the part well, but the part itself was just obnoxious. I just found Rachel incredibly annoying, and the show focused way too much on her for the longest time. Anyway, once the show got to the point where characters transferred school at the drop of the hat, I couldn't take it any longer. Seriously, Jonathan Groff and Darren Criss' characters switched schools in like a day. That doesn't happen. Another thing that was totally unrealistic were the impromptu performances. New Directioners learned song and dance numbers with full costumes and lighting, I might add, in 1 day. That doesn't happen for a high school choir. It's impossible. Especially since the audience has to believe that McKinley High School has room in their budget for the ridiculous amount of costumes, scenery, and props used by the Glee Club. And the Cheerios, for that matter, take up a pretty hefty amount of that money for their own ridiculousness. Also, who are the kids who play in the band that is just always in the choir room? They are basically part of the Glee Club, and we don't even know their names. I find the lack of background on those characters to be a huge hole in the story. And it's not like they pretend they aren't there. The Glee Club members interact with them when they're singing, but that's about it. So weird. One of the biggest problems with this show is the lack of continuity and character development. The writers just decide to have some strange things become important all of a sudden when they run out of ideas, or they have the characters do something completely random just because, and then those events have no effect on the character itself. The situations are so unrealistic and have often been criticized for being soap opera-esque. For instance, what happened to Finn's plot after graduation? He was in the military, but then he was discharged because he was injured himself. So then he went back and taught at McKinley because being an alum is apparently enough qualification to teach there. Then kissed Will's wife and caused a scandal with that, and finally enrolled at a college before the actor Corey Monteith sadly and suddenly passed away. And remember that time that Quinn had a baby in season 1, but returned to her same old self in season 2 like nothing happened? She finally experienced some realistic effects in a 180-degree flip to a pink-haired, leather-wearing rebel chick at the beginning of season 3. But don't worry, she switched right back to a preppy cheerleader like 3 episodes later. The tribute episodes and guest stars are so frequent, and many complain that the show ruins good songs, which, at least in my opinion, is completely true. But thankfully, we won't have to deal with this terribly cheesy show much longer, as it was announced last October that Glee would be ending after its 6th season. Honestly, I'm surprised it took so long. The ratings and song sales have been steadily declining for years. For all of you who haven't watched Glee and want to know what I'm talking about, the 5th and current season runs through May 13th on Fox.
Thanks, Kelly. There's not much worse than a TV show outstaying its welcome.
At least they had success at some point. Some films barely even make it off the ground because of bad trailers.
That's true. Sometimes a trailer can be the make or break for a film's success because of the anticipation it builds. Here to talk about some recent trailers is Ben Kramer with a new trailer watch.
About 3 months ago, Warner Brothers released a teaser trailer for a summer movie called Jupiter Ascending. The film stars Channing Tatum and Mila Kunis and is directed by siblings Andy and Lana Wachowski, who are most famously known as the creators of the Matrix trilogy. Last week, the second trailer came out, and it gives us more information on the story. And now when it comes to the story, all I can take away from the trailer is that Mila Kunis is supposedly some kind of a princess or deity who is destined for greatness, and Channing Tatum is responsible for protecting her. Oh yeah, and Mila's character's name is Jupiter, hence the title. Visually, the movie looks awesome, which is no surprise considering it's a sci-fi action epic directed by the Wachowskis. And speaking of the Wachowskis, I remember when I first saw the trailer to their last movie, Cloud Atlas. It was over 6 minutes long, and it still left me confused on the plot. It looked visually stunning, and because I was so intrigued by the cast and the interwoven plot lines, it made me want to go see it immediately. Unfortunately, this isn't the case with Jupiter Ascending. I have no huge problems with the 2 stars, or with the directors for that matter, but this movie just looks like another all flash and no bang type of movie that will try to stand out as something unique, when in fact it really isn't. Jupiter Ascending comes out July 18th. This past week, the first trailer for the Michael Bay-produced Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was released, and since then has become the #1 movie people talk about on the internet. I have no evidence to prove whether or not that's true, but what I do know is that I have known about this reboot for quite some time. In fact, it was 2 years ago this week when I heard Michael Bay wanted to bring back TMNT to the big screen. And I honestly thought it was some kind of April Fool's joke, but no, the infamous Hollywood filmmaker was serious, and now we have the trailer. And speaking of April Fools, Megan Fox is playing April O'Neil. The former Transformers actress is the human main character, while the 4 turtles appear as these ugly and ginormous creatures that are entirely CGI. What made me dislike this trailer was how indifferent it was to the source material. Shredder, played by William Fichtner, is white, the Foot Clan are too military-like, and we hardly see the turtles until the very end. And it's only Michelangelo we see. Not surprisingly, Michelangelo was my favorite part of the trailer, because at least he still acted goofy when introducing himself to April. Another trailer is sure to come out soon because we need to see more of the turtles and less of Megan Fox. Will Arnett and Whoopi Goldberg are supposedly in the movie as well, and so it would be nice to see their characters too. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comes out August 8th. A movie that I was intrigued about for a while was Hercules, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. The trailer just came out, and it automatically is better than the other Hercules movie that came out in January. It showcases Hercules fighting lions, sea serpents, and tons of warriors. Not much is said of the story, but that's not surprising. The pros of this movie are the visual effects and The Rock's muscles. The cons of this movie are Brett Ratner, and Brett Ratner. The man has directed the Rush Hour trilogy and was also responsible for X-Men: The Last Stand, which we all know is supremely inferior to the first 2. The movie worries me just because of Brett Ratner, but based solely on the trailer, I am genuinely excited to see what this movie has to offer fans of the summer blockbuster. Hercules comes out July 25th. I'm Ben Kramer, and this has been Trailer Watch.
Thanks, Ben. Only time can tell how those films will eventually be received.
But in the meantime, we have to take another break. Coming up is our final word. You don't want to miss this.
This is how it ends. Everything goes.
Looks like you're giving the orders now, Captain.
Damn right.
Welcome back. This week's show is coming to an end, but before we go, we have time for one last final word.
If you sat in a movie theater and thought to yourself, gosh, this movie is really long, you're not alone. Recently, movies have become longer than ever. One would think, however, that the opposite should be true. After all, in this digital technology era, our attention spans are becoming shorter than ever. Plus, because the more times a movie is shown equals the more money that it generates, wouldn't it make sense for movies to be short to increase the number of times that it can be shown in a given day? Yet, the trend of making movies 2.5 to almost 3 hours long is alive and well. Take Wolf of Wall Street, for example. A great movie, no doubt, but the running time is 3 hours. 2 hours in, and I was still waiting for the climax. I think the cutting room floor could have snipped out a few scenes to cut down the time. After all, sitting in a theater for 3 hours with no break makes for a sore bottom. Even Man of Steel, Divergent, Cloud Atlas, Django Unchained, this is 40. Nearly every movie that comes out now is more than 2 hours long. I remember a decade ago when I thought Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings were really long movies. Now this trend seems to be the norm. Rolling Stone film critic Peter Travers says that Oscar season is to blame because movie executives now think that if it isn't long, then it isn't winning. Another critic attributes this trend to better technology, such as digital versus analog, and experienced directors having massive budgets to make a lengthy film. Although long movies may push people away from going to the theater, others may enjoy seeing their favorite film go into more depth. Fandango recently conducted a survey, and 78% of the more than 1,000 respondents said they feel that long movies give them more bang for their buck. For me, I don't really mind them if they're good, because then time doesn't drag as much. However, if 3-hour-long movies does become the norm, could we at least be given an intermission?
That's a very good point, Kaylee.
Thank you.
In my final word, I'm just going to take a moment to explain just another facet of how things work in Tinseltown. So, new movies come out pretty much every week these days, but you've probably noticed that different kinds of movies come out at different times of the year. Like nearly everything else in this industry, this is actually done quite deliberately to maximize profits for the major studios. You'll seldom hear anybody come right out and acknowledge what's going on straight up, but the movie calendar has been divided up pretty much along the same lines as the seasons. And these movie seasons go thusly. January through March makes up the late winter season, by most accounts the dullest of the four, because the qualification period for each of the Academy Awards ends on December 31st, but the ceremony itself isn't until late February, early March. Studios are reluctant to release films that might detract from the notability of their Oscar bait. So we get a lot of piddly and not really memorable films that just spark enough interest to keep the profits from moving backward. These days, spring and summer have begun to blend into each other, creating a sort of all-around cash season from April through July. These months typically start off with weak action and teen romance flicks, films that might look all right, but usually seem a bit lacking in depth. June and July, on the other hand, are when the studios pull out all the stops in the special effects department, attracting all the kids now out of school with superheroes, monsters, car chases, battles, and just about anything else you'd expect to find in your average PG-13 production. The money gets made here. After the rush of summer, things die down again from August through mid-October, a dry period of filler films that really don't fall into the exceptionally artistic nor effects-riddled time slots elsewhere in the year. But lastly, the early winter prestige season typically gets all the great story films that the studios have been saving up all year. The ones that are really meant to convey strong messages and make people feel good about themselves and humanity. This, ostensibly, is because critics have short memories, and releasing the films earlier in the year would hamper their chances at success at the awards. These aren't necessarily the most profitable films in the year's lineup, but more ones meant to help build and reinforce brand recognitions. Honestly, I could go far more in depth on the history and strategies behind these seasonal trends, but this sums it up so far. So, if you're savvy, you now know what you can generally expect to see, and when, at the box office.
That's it for this week's show. Thanks for tuning in.
Be sure to check out our Facebook, Twitter, and website for all things news and entertainment. I'm Connor Fack.
And I'm Kaylee Russell. We'll see you next week.